My name is Bea. I'm an environmental educator with EcoMaine, and I'm here today to talk to you all a little bit about Wishcycling. Anyone here think they might be a culprit of Wishcycling or might not know what Wishcycling is? I think it's a lot in the name, you know, hoping something's recyclable. Maybe it's even is marketed as recyclable. We'll get in a little bit to greenwashing too, and things that might say that they're recyclable, but they're not really. So a little bit about EcoMaine as a whole is that we are the service that provides waste management services to North Yarmouth, Cumberland, and 74 communities across the state. Our mission is to provide comprehensive long-term solid waste solutions in a safe, environmentally responsible, and economically sound manner. We're based out of Portland. We're kind of by the Jetport, by Unum, if you've ever seen us. But we have a waste-to-energy facility, we have a recycling facility, and we have an ashfill landfill that takes the byproduct from our waste-to-energy facility. So these are our three facilities that we're managing. Does anyone know where we are? Has anyone seen us before? Right off the highway? All right. I didn't. I grew up right in Falmouth, and I had no idea where it was until I started working there. So if you don't know where we are, we're right around there, and we're accepting about 175,000 tons of trash every year that's processed through the waste-to-energy process. We got into that as well in our Recycling 101 conversation earlier this year. And then we process about 35,000 tons of recycling every year. This is our breakdown. As you can see, a lot more waste that we're processing than we are processing recycling. We would love to see these kind of shift. As a lot of what makes up our waste stream, this is actually a waste composition study from 2011. There's an updated one coming out this spring that we're waiting on patiently. But a lot of this stuff is paper, plastics, metals, and glass that actually got into our waste stream. So people that aren't recycling to begin with. So there's a lot of materials that aren't caught that end up going to waste to energy. There's no sorting once it's in a trash truck. It's not going to get sorted out as recyclable. What's recycling is put in a recycling bin and comes to us as those recyclables. We started as Portland, South Portland, Scarborough, and Cape Elizabeth. They established regional waste systems. They traded in their municipal landfills back in the 70s. And they started regional waste systems, which was 240 acres of jointly owned landfill. And this was raw waste landfill. So we were being used as a transfer station, basically, where these towns were coming to our facility. They would take a baler, compact all of that raw trash into cubes, and then bring them to the raw waste landfill, which is now been capped, and now we just have ash there. But they have all of that old landfill still there. So that's about 2 miles down the road towards Westbrook. It's the Cinemagic in Westbrook, if that's an idea for anyone here. And then in the 1980s, regional waste system expanded to service more than 20 communities. That's when North Yarmouth, Cumberland, we had someone from Falmouth. That's when all of those communities jumped on. So they are our 20 owner municipalities. We are a municipally owned nonprofit, so we're owned by those communities. We have a representative from each of those communities that sits on a board of directors that are making those decisions for EcoMaine. So this started in 1988. That's when our waste-to-energy facility went online. That waste-to-energy facility allowed us to accept more waste than ever before, as well as reduce landfilling and reduce emissions created by our waste, because landfills create a lot of methane. Then we started accepting recyclables, which is going to be the big focus for today, in the 90s. When we started accepting recyclables, this was source separated, so all the paper was together, plastic, the metal, they were all in their separate categories, and then they would get baled using what used to be that trash baler that we used back in the 70s. They now used it for recyclables. They bale those and then send them out to market. So that was still regional waste systems. They're taking those source separated materials. The waste is going to this new waste to energy facility at this point. Our old transfer station, which was right up the hill, was now turned into that recycling facility where they were baling these recyclables to send them out to market. And it wasn't until 2006 that we actually started EcoMaine. So we rebranded to EcoMaine. We've grown to over 74 communities all across the state, as well as in New Hampshire. And we started Maine's first single sort recycling program. So that went online in 2006. And that is how we do our recycling now. So we can put all of those different materials into one bin, and then it goes through mechanical, manual, and robotic sorting to be sorted into its correct category. We are creating a new recycling facility right now, actually. So that should be going online in 2026, September of 2026, which is exciting. We'll double our capacity, so we're hoping to accept even more recyclables and be able to grow our footprint across the state. But not only that, but we're also taking organic material as well for anaerobic digestion as of 2016. We don't do the digestion on site. We work with a company called AgriCycle Energy, which does anaerobic digestion, so breaking down that organic material, so food waste from a lot of the grocery stores around, restaurants, schools, even some, if you're doing it in your household, maybe some of that's coming through the AgriCycle program. They'll break it down, harness that energy, and create an electricity from it, and then use the slurry on their crops. They're actually on a farm up in Exeter, Maine. So they're about 2 hours north, so we're used as a compilation site for them. This is our footprint right now. You can see we actually are all the way up towards the Brooklyn, Sedgwick, Blue Hill Peninsula area, all the way down to the New Hampshire seacoast, out to Western Maine, but with a large focus on that greater Portland area, as it makes the most sense financially to be trucking your materials shorter distances, right? So it's harder to get the stuff from up north back down to our facility. We do have different types. We have owners, associates, and contract communities, but most of those owner communities are focused in that greater Portland area. So we're going to test your knowledge before here with a little bit of recycling trivia, I guess. We'll call it recycling trivia. So we got this list here. Who here, by raise of hands, thinks that paper clips can be recycled in your recycling bin? Wherever you live, in North Yarmouth, Cumberland, wherever. Is anyone not North Yarmouth, Cumberland, or Falmouth? No? All right, great. So, paper clips, yes or no? Okay, I see a lot of yeses. What about bottle caps?
If it's on the bottom. That's a good...
You're onto something there, yes. So raise your hand. Bottle caps, are they recyclable? As if you just threw it in, not on the bottle, is it recyclable? Okay. Milk cartons. Okay. Laundry detergent jugs. Individual plastic lids. Lids of coffee cups. Lids of your yogurt container. Okay. I see some nods. Batteries. Can they go? Okay. Magazines. Coffee cups. We'll just talk about the cup, not the lid in this case. Okay. Paper coffee cups or plastic coffee cups? Okay. And then pots and pans. Can those go in your curbside recycling bin? All right. So paper clips, not recyclable in your curbside bin. Those are going to fall right through our cracks in our first part of our sorting process. Anything that is basically smaller than a medicine container. You think of those small medicine containers, that's our minimum size. Flat is also going to be a concern. We'll talk about the rules of recycling a little bit, but flat plastics are not recyclable. They can actually end up getting sorted into the wrong category. Milk cartons, highest commodity that we have. Those HDPE naturals, those are actually, I believe right now, selling upwards of $2,000 per ton. So they've actually become more valuable than our aluminum for the first time ever, which is pretty crazy. So definitely that HDPE or number 2 plastic, yes. Laundry detergent jugs, those are good. We do ask that things get emptied out as much as you can. Caps put back on, that was a great comment you had. Individual plastic lids, if they're put onto the container, plastic lids are okay. If they're not put onto the container and they're separate, they're going to fall through those cracks, right? They're smaller than that medicine bottle. We cannot accept batteries. Batteries actually can cause a big problem at our facility with fires. We'll go a little bit more into that, but those are a no-go for us. Those can go to other facilities. Maybe I know Target has a collection right up front. Staples will take them. Lithium-ion batteries can go to transfer stations. They can go back to Lowe's, Home Depot. So there's a lot of take-back programs for those kinds of things.
What do they do with batteries?
Those go through their own recycling process. So they have to basically, there's chemicals in them, especially the lithium ions, those rechargeable ones.
Where do they do that?
It beats me. I know Call to Recycle is the company that takes our batteries from us.
Because I took mine to the dump and he put them right in the waste.
In the waste, were they regular alkaline batteries?
Yeah.
Those are okay to go. So alkaline batteries can go in your trash. Not the recycling, but the trash. Those ones aren't volatile. But rechargeable, like our phones, any other rechargeable devices, those are the problems. Those are the big concerns that we have. Magazines are good. There was some confusion about glossy paper, but glossy paper is okay. Even glossy paper boards, so spaghetti containers, things like that. Those windows, those also don't need to be taken out. Those are okay. Windows are fine to keep in. So anytime you see that little thin, it's small enough that it's not going to cause a problem for our system. Coffee cups are okay. We say if you have a paper coffee cup, that plastic lid has to get thrown out, right? Because they have to be separated. We can't actually have mixed materials. So you have a plastic lid on a paper cup, that wouldn't be recyclable. The plastic lid would have to get thrown out. The paper cup could go in the recycling. If you got a plastic cup with a plastic lid, if they're the same type of plastic, which most of the time they are, if you go to Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks, they'll usually be that clear plastic top and bottom, number one. Those are okay to go in as one unit. So that's a tricky one. And it's, to think that, the hot coffee needs to be split, but the regular one actually should be sandwiched together. And pots and pans are actually okay, which was a big shocker to me. I know when I first learned this, but they're good. They'll be pulled out by a magnet in our recycling system. So we do like to go by the main solid waste hierarchy, starting with reduce, reuse, recycle. Is that familiar to anyone in here, right? We're trying to reduce and reuse. That's why utilize that repair fair coming up. That's a great way that we can reuse. And then recycle recycling and compost. They're about the same level there. Recycling sends it back into the system, so we're not using virgin materials, which is great. Compost for our organics. And then the last places we want material to go to is waste to energy and landfill. Yes, waste to energy is a little bit better because we're able to reduce the volume that's going to a landfill as well as emissions related to it, but it's still trash. We really do not want things going to trash to begin with. So this right here is our tipping hall. So that's all that mixed material. See, this would be repeat information had you guys been to the first presentation, but this right here is our tipping hall. So this tractor is coming in and it is pushing. I don't know why this video is buffering so much here. But it's going to push all of that material into a drum feeder that feeds the right amount of material onto the conveyor belt. All of this should be loose. So Wishcycling would be if you had all of that thrown in a trash bag, right? Or into a plastic bag, and then you put the whole bag into your recycling bin. That is not recyclable. They can't even identify if that plastic bag is trash or if it's recycling. So know what they do? They pull it as trash. So they're not gonna take the time to open it. Because if they open it and it is something yucky and trash, that's a problem that they have now. So this all gets pushed on. It actually only takes about 3 minutes for it to properly sort. I wonder if it's the Wi-Fi that I have going on. This is the sorting stars. So if you put those small bottle caps, the paper clips, this is where it's gonna fall out. So the concept of this, I actually have a sorting star with me today, but we have these axles and those big rubber stars that the cardboard kind of surfs over the top. The remainder falls between the cracks. We even have a great system under here. This is where sometimes we'll get shredded paper that falls through the cracks because it's little. You'll see a lot of broken glass if it broke along the way. Paper clips, those small things, will end up in this part of the system. I also like to note all of these things tangled in those axles also oftentimes Wishcycling, people thinking plastic bags are recyclable, right? They've got a recycling symbol on them. Throw it in. This is where it ends up, wrapped around our sorting stars. This right here is one of those sorting stars, and you can see how it could easily get things wrapped around it as it's rotating all throughout the day. Every day they actually have to stop our machines and have staff go in and individually hand cut all of those things that have been caught in the sorting stars out. So that's every single day that's happening. So people are doing it often. We say about 10% of our material stream is actually contamination, which is huge. That's a huge amount of, if we're receiving 35,000 tons a year, that's 3,500 tons of trash because it was wrongfully put into the recycling bin. So it's a huge problem that needs to be tackled. This is where paper gets sorted out here. Then we have metal sorting. So this is why those pots and pans can get thrown in the recycling bin, because they'll get pulled right out through here. As long as we're not throwing out the biggest pot you have, you know, for your lobster bake. That's way too big. But as long as it's, you know, pretty normal size, it should be okay to put into your recycling bin. So things will get sucked up to this magnet and then sorted into the correct bin. Non-ferrous metals, so aluminum primarily, is going to get sorted out using a reverse eddy current, which basically repels it into the correct category. So that's going to be aluminum, copper, and zinc. That's what you can see here is all that material coming off of this and getting, you'll see a few jumping up into that bin. That's because it's repelling all of that aluminum into the correct category. So that's how we sort out the aluminum. This is actually a really clean way. We actually get very low contamination within our aluminum category. The ferrous metals, so tin and steel, a lot more things will get into that, because you think you put your tin cans in a paper bag, that paper bag's getting sucked right up with the tin can, right? If it's still in there. Anything that's under or above the metal is going to get sucked up with it. So we often will see contamination through that. We also have a glass breaking screen. This crushes it up into this kind of like substrate material. This right here is our sinks in our bathrooms that are actually made of that recycled glass, which is kind of neat. And then down here we have used it as fill. Glass gets crushed up. It's actually used on site primarily. Sometimes it can be sent out to be turned into these kinds of countertops and stuff like that. There are things to be made of recycled glass, but this is one of the lower value commodities. A lot of places are dropping it because it's really heavy, so they have to pay for the tonnage, and the value is lower. But we're still accepting it. Plastics continue along the conveyor belt to get sorted through an optical sorter. So this right here basically scans down in, recognizes that resin coat of the plastic to send that out. So you can see a puff of air is sent directly where that item was on the conveyor belt to sort that into its separate category. This right here is sorting those number one. So those would be the iced coffee cups, the soda bottles, the water bottles, and sorting those into the correct category. All of the remaining ones are sorted, so remaining plastics, numbers 2 through 7, these are the plastics that we're taking. They have to be rigid containers, are sorted by people. So this is another thing. People sometimes don't realize that there's an actual person on the other end of this. You know, someone that has the potential to get cut by a sheet of glass that got thrown in there, or a kitchen knife, or who knows what, you know. There's a lot of things that are pretty crazy that get thrown into the recycling. So remembering that this is their job to do this. So this is where they're sorting, those number 2 through 7s. Those are often very clean because we have manual sorters there, but it's slower. It takes a longer time to get the proper sorting through. Once the materials are all sorted, they go and they get baled. That's what you're seeing here. That's the original trash baler. We're using it for recyclables now. We'll have a nice new one, probably half the size, in our new facility. But this one's almost the entire downstairs. But each of these bales can weigh up to 1,200 to 2,200 pounds. This is where they check it for contamination, and there often is. You know, they're going to find plastics that people sorted in there wrong. They're going to find tanglers, ropes, things like that, that got thrown into the wrong bin. They'll pull out what they can. We do have acceptable contamination amounts in a bale, so just because there's one thing in it doesn't mean it's completely scrapped. Right here you can see they start to pull out some of that stuff, but once it's at a pretty good state, it's able to get loaded up onto a truck and taken out to market. So the Wishcycling, what exactly is Wishcycling? It's putting the non-recyclable items in the recycling bin with the hope that they're going to get recycled, which happens a lot. It happens every day. This is someone in there hand cutting all of those things that people thought were recyclable. Textiles are another one that people love to throw into the recycling bin. They cannot be recycled in your curbside bin. But it contaminates the recycling and it makes it harder and more dangerous to sort when it gets to EcoMaine. This right here is a fire simulation that we did. This isn't actually a real one right here, but we had plenty. We had at least 32 last year. Fires at our facility, just in our, I believe, in the recycling facility. So it's happening. It happens a lot. And you think we have that big baler. What if you put a camp stove, a propane canister in there? So all of a sudden it's all compacted. That's a big problem we have is it goes through the baler and something will explode. And then we've got all that paper and cardboard that's easily flammable. So we do see fires. We have a great relationship with the fire department, 3-minute commute to our facility, and we are prepared for it. We do have fire suppression systems. We do have our staff trained because it's something that they encounter regularly. Even this kind of thing. If we didn't send someone in to hand cut those out, what happens when all of that stuff rubs against each other for a long time at high speeds? We're going to get friction, right? You get a friction fire. So it can happen. These are common wish-cycled items. These are probably the most common that we see. Anything from wood, building supplies, these plastic caps that go on coffee cups. They're often marked with a recycling symbol, right? A lot of these things are marked with a recycling symbol. This one right here, these Prime packages, I even brought one with me today. It's got that recycling symbol on it. For most people, they see that, recycling. That's the extent. And it's understandable. Most people, that's just the way people think. This one even says that it can be recycled, right in here. Other ones, number 4, recycling symbol. So there's no regulation on it. Not really any regulation. The companies can put a lot on as long as it's recyclable somewhere, which they are probably recyclable if they go to a certain place, to a certain recycling facility, right? If these are taken back to Hannaford to be film plastic recycled, they're recyclable. So the company's going to run with that, because it's possible. If things are maybe even just sent back to the company that they purchased it from, maybe that's recyclable. This one right here, this is another one that we see, these number 1 plastics. This is multiple different types of material. This can get caught in our stars. We've got a lot of packing material is often marked as recyclable when it isn't necessarily. Food packaging companies, if you get I don't know if it's HelloFresh or one of those ones, I know it comes with these, they're like plastic recyclable freezer bags or freezer packs, and they're filled with liquid, but you have to read the directions carefully because you have to let it thaw, empty the water out, bring it to the film plastic recycling at Hannaford. You can't just throw it all in your recycling bin. But a lot of people do this, it happens. So it's important that we're educating ourselves on this and educating those that we know as well in our communities. Crinkle plastics are another one. Napkins, paper towels, not recyclable. And if they've been used, they're not recyclable, which hopefully they're being used. If you're just throwing in perfectly fine napkins, that's okay, as long as it's clean, but we don't want any kind of biocontamination. If you're sneezing into a tissue and throwing it in the recycling bin, what about all those people that are at our facility every day sorting through that, They don't want dirty tissues. They don't want dirty toilet paper, dirty paper towels. This is stuff that happens. Diapers, believe it or not, constant. We get diapers all the time. Not recyclable. So Food and candy wrappers, yeah, styrofoam is a huge one as well. That's often labeled as recyclable. That is not recyclable. It's incredibly energy intensive to recycle for facilities that do recycle it. So that's another problem. Food, that could go to an anaerobic digester or compost. Not recyclable, right? You need to wash things out. That's the other thing. Lids by themselves, big one. Medical waste, that has to go to a medical waste facility. This includes sharps. Sharps can also be contained in a rigid plastic container and brought to our trash facility, but has to be treated as trash and taped shut. Yes?
So like a plastic yogurt lid that's flat, can you just throw the lid in, or you
Not
also
just
said,
the lid, it would
you
have
also
to be
said-
attached.
Yeah, you said flat plastic earlier.
Yeah, flat plastic is nose. So any kind of flat plastic, unless it's attached to the container.
But how does it stay attached?
Generally, they'll stay attached throughout we see a lot of them attached. If it doesn't, that's kind of something that we'll take a gamble on, because people are already we just want to limit the amount of people putting stuff in like that. Not to say, like, if it falls off, it might get sorted into the right category, because then it has to go through our systems. But generally, we see them stay on for the most part, especially screw-on caps. Those ones are pretty consistent with staying on.
So
Yes.
can the cap on a milk jug stays on?
Pretty well, because it's the
Okay.
threaded
All right.
top. Yeah.
I will say that the number one tip that I got from your last talk, which I've told everybody and nobody knows this, is your aluminum cans to either leave them partially on,
Yeah.
like don't go all the way around, or
Yeah.
crimp the top of the can so that, like, put the
Yeah.
lid on the inside
So
and then
that's-
crimp the can so they don't fall out.
That's a great way for aluminum cans. That's what I do. Or steel cans. Steel cans is what, like soup cans, tomato sauce cans, stuff like that. Beans, you open them up, you fold for me, I know I just kind of partially pull it back, right? And then you keep it still attached, right, to the whole unit, so they're not going to fall off. They're not going to slip out, because those are sharp, right? Those could potentially hurt someone too. So what I do is I keep it partially tabbed on. I just pull it back, and then I fold it back into the can. Then you don't have the sharp problem. I actually learned that because of dogs. I grew up with dogs around, so it's to keep them from like getting cut on the actual
I mean, it's
can.
actually super easy, because I
Yeah.
have cats and I
Yeah.
pop the lid all the time. And it's
Yeah.
very easy to just kind of crimp the top of the can.
Yeah,
so
and
that
bend
the
it
lid
back
can't
in.
fall
Yeah,
back, yeah.
exactly.
I have yogurt that has a peel-off cover, which
Yep.
is usually foil.
So
Oh,
if it's foil, we get that a lot. If it's foil, technically, if it's clean, foil's okay. As long as we would say usually collect a bunch of them and ball them up into a larger, you don't want just a teeny tiny little thing of metal, right? Because that might fall through the cracks. But if you kept them and made a bigger ball of foil, it would be fine. Otherwise, if it's just a really small amount, then it could fall through our machinery. So that's big. Yes?
So if the lid comes off the can, you don't want the lid, or do you?
If the lid comes off the can, we do. The lid's fine. We just say put it back in and fold it if possible. Just kind of try to keep it together the best you can so it doesn't get sorted out separately.
But I use my cans for other things, and then I have the lid left.
Okay.
You don't want that.
It might not make it through. If it's just a lid, it can fall right through the cracks. The thin, flat pieces of plastic, of metal, they can fall. If they're too small, they're not going to work with the system, unfortunately. So there's also a lot of innovation. And I think I'm gonna hold the questions for the end, and then we can do kind of question and answer at the end, just so I can run through everything. Might answer some of the questions along the way. So lots of innovations with new materials. So bioplastics are a huge one that we see, or PLA plastic. Biodegradable fiber products like this, bamboo and wood, reusable wear. These are all great things because it's not regular plastic that's being introduced. They'll break down better. However, they do come with their own host of problems as well. where just because we have these compostable things, a lot of people forget, oh, you need a compost to put them in so they break down the way they were designed to break down, right? They're compostable if they're brought to an industrial composting facility, which is usually the catch right there. So that's how they could break down, but these often go into the trash stream. Sometimes they go into the recycling stream, right? People think they'll see the leaf on it, it looks like a cup, acts like a cup, goes right into the recycling container. Now this has been a new added contamination that we see of that Wishcycling, of people being like, oh, it's got to be recyclable because it's, it looks like a plastic cup. No, they don't actually act like plastic. They look like plastic, they don't act like plastic when it's melted down and turned into something new. They actually have a much lower temperature that they melt at. So it's a very interesting difference between the compostable and the regular plastic. And there's a lot of lack of compostable disposal options in our area. Even if things go to AgriCycle and an anaerobic digesting facility, they do have a depackaging process. So this is used so large grocery companies, they can get rid of all of their food that goes bad right in the packages. They don't have to sit there and unpackage everything. So they're great. We're able to save a lot of food that way, but that packaging comes back to waste energy to be processed through a waste energy process. Doesn't actually make it into their system. So you think about compostable cups, if they act like plastic in that industrial, anaerobic digestion process, they might not. They're going to end up coming back as a plastic material and packaging. So makes it a little tricky. There's definitely a need for truth in labeling. We talked a little bit about this, but there's not much for rules. And there's a lot of different labels. So we've got trustworthy labels, B Corp, USDA organic, things like this, and then these kinds of biodegradable. These are really just, they sound great and they get slapped on things. These are not trusted. So if you see these kinds of things, they're often leaves, 100% organic. Those aren't necessarily as trustworthy. The very different certifications and standards. So many materials are wrongfully labeled with these recyclable or compostable claims. Labels are very misleading to all consumers, right? It's confusing, everything being mislabeled, or even if they're properly labeled, but we don't know the disposal. And it can unintentionally lead to contamination in compost and recycling streams, and cause a lot of this consumer confusion and Wishcycling. These are another, this was the packaging, those ice packs I was talking about. So these have a whole list underneath the big recycle me, a whole list of how you recycle it. It's like 3 different steps that you have to follow to then recycle that material. And that's only if you have access to that kind of thing. These are some photos of our actual recycling, things that we've pulled out. So we've got Poland Spring bags. Those go around the big plastic, all the big plastic bottles. And they actually have 2 different things, 2 different claims for 2 different types of plastics, the bottles that they're surrounding and the plastic around the outside. Even stuff like this, a new, innovative, non-plastic alternative. However, these break down, they could break down in a compost, but not that soy plastic foam on the inside could cause problems in recycling to the paper, right? So there's all these different things, and I always suggest if you've got some kind of interesting packaging material to rip it and see if there's more than 1 layer on the inside, because there's often foil, plastic, or some kind of foam on the inside. So just keeping an eye out on that kind of thing. Some of them are great. There's actually some that are full fiber-based mailers that they're doing. So just important to note that. And we covered some of these already. Wishcycling downstream is problematic. If they're marketed as recyclable or sustainable, they often end up in the wrong bin. This can cause those problems with contamination in our recycling. And when we see that, it becomes we get lesser grade materials. So our materials aren't worth as much because they have this contamination in them, which is value, that they're receiving. Contamination fines can fall on municipalities. So if we see that you're getting tons of contamination that's coming through, lots of trash coming to the recycling, there can be fines made to municipalities for that. Some places have had recycling kind of taken away because they're sick of paying fines, right? You have a neighborhood that routinely is putting trash in their recycling bin. One day they might not have recycling, so a lot of places have this kind of taken away, which is not great. And more materials end up being diverted to waste to energy at our facility. So any contamination that we pull out as contamination is going to waste energy. So the more contamination we receive, the more it's problematic to our recycling facility. And they can also cause safety concerns for our staff, specifically those batteries. This is an example. These are actually batteries that they've pulled out of our recycling stream. I just took that photo someday when I went by. They'll fill up a bucket. That bucket's about 2 or 3 feet tall. They'll fill it up at least once a week of batteries that have come through our recycling facilities, and those are just the ones that got caught. A lot of them are those lithium-ion batteries, which do get labeled with, once again, our favorite recycling symbol. So a lot of those lithium-ion batteries have recycling symbols on them. Very misleading to consumers and very dangerous for recycling staff. Very dangerous for hauling as well. I don't know if anyone's seen videos, but there's been a few that have gone around of lithium-ion battery fires in the trash truck when the compactor, picks up your trash. And they've had to dump that all out on the road because they're just told to basically abandon whatever's in the stream. So they just basically will dump the trash to get the fire away from the truck. They're very dangerous. They're mixed materials, which is one reason why they're non-recyclable. They're hazardous materials, and they're very volatile and flammable because they're chemical fires. This right here is how quick that can start. So you see that, I'm just gonna fast forward or backtrack here. That truck dumped it off. There was a battery that combusted, and it immediately just goes up into flames. This was our tipping floor just a couple years ago. Just an example, they're trained to drag that out, separate it outside of the rest of the materials, ideally outside of our building. There's been a lot of recycling facilities that have been completely lost because of these fires, waste to energy or any kind of waste facility as well. In our new facility, we're actually designing around lithium-ion batteries and having an entirely separate tipping floor. It's going to be a whole different part of our building. So if we lose the tipping floor from one of these fires, we're not losing all that equipment. But right here, all of that equipment is totally surrounded by that tipping floor because this wasn't as much of a problem even 10 years ago, 15 years ago when we weren't seeing these rechargeable items. These are our wish-cycled unhonorable mentions, things that have come through. We've got propane canisters, a whole thing of camp stove containers always gets thrown into our recycling. There's no way that we can tell really if that is, when it's going through our line, if it's full or not. So even if it's empty, they do get pulled off just in case. We'll even get these large ones. I don't even know. We get all sorts of different things. We've got the balloon helium tanks, propane, big propane tanks. This right here is an entire tree that came through in sections not too long ago. I think it was last month, maybe 2 months ago. They got 12 or 16 segments of this big, probably fallen tree. I was in there the other day. I should have taken a photo. An entire, yard of leaves came through the facility, got sorted right into our contamination as well. It looked like they probably needed to rake the place up. It was unbelievable. This is a 35-pound dumbbell that came through. That could really damage our facility as well. Things I could not picture are going to be sharp items, any kind of weapons, sharp knives, kitchen knives, things like that, sharps in general, cleanups, a lot of street cleanups have led to a lot of these sharps coming in. We'll see them more than just that. There's a lot of people who take medicine, prescriptions, that are sharps, and sometimes these end up in our recycling facility, can be very dangerous for staff around. And lastly, the craziest one I have seen is a moose head. So that was, yes, full moose head. It's crazy. Only in Maine, I guess, that you will see a moose head come through the recycling facility. But decide to save you all from that photo that came through. That did get emailed to me, I think, at some point. No, it wasn't. It was, I think it was poached, is my guess, is someone just didn't want to, they probably took what they wanted and got rid of it in whatever bin they could find. So just some things that are definitely not recyclable and do come to our facilities. This will figure out if it works. It was working a little bit earlier. But this is going to be just a quick conversation I had with our recycling manager about Wishcycling, greenwashing, or putting those labels on things, mislabeling things, and how it affects the recycling stream. There's subtitles. Unfortunately, this is as loud as it's going to go tonight. So again,
how do you see truth in labeling and greenwashing impacting recycling?
I believe that by not properly labeling or deceptively labeling items, that you pollute the recycling stream in a sense, causing your materials to not come out as clean, causing more waste to come out of the stream as well. It hinders the process from being as effective as it can be.
So what are the most common materials you see that are not truthfully labeled?
We see a lot of thin plastic bags, thin plastic that's not really recyclable. We see a lot of mixed material objects that may be recyclable as individual parts, but are not recyclable as a whole. We see some packing materials that's also mixed material, usually of foam or paper mixed with it, that's not recyclable.
How does contamination affect productivity?
The more contamination in the system, the longer it takes and the more effort is required to get a clean product out of it. The more stuff we have in the system requires more cleaning of the system. The employees have to get in and physically remove all the items that wrap around our stars that contaminate it. That's a risk.
All right.
We have to use
Anyway,
knives to
it's
get
a risk
materials cut
to
off.
have all those materials
Do you
cut off.
think that truth
Is that basically, there's a big need for waste disposal alternatives and education to kind of combat this. It is a real challenging problem that we face. So multi-stream waste bins, this is just a cute one that the King Middle School cafeteria put together in Portland with all of their different streams. They even have a little system to pour out their milk before they've gone through. So they're starting to teach this young in a lot of different schools, which is really great and promising to see. Like, I got to witness the lunch periods in some of these schools, and seeing their knowledge of what's going on is pretty impressive. Simple and direct disposal directions and of packaging and labeling is going to be huge. Maybe even legislation and policy regarding this packaging and labeling, making it more clear for consumers. Companies beginning to make more readily recyclable materials, right? Not making these hard to handle materials, not making these things that can't be recycled, that can't be composted. Because we do have alternative streams that aren't waste energy and landfill, that aren't going to be problematic. And also consumers making those kinds of decisions themselves and choosing those more sustainable options. And then also there's a need for more industrial composting facilities. These kinds of facilities I'm sure will pop up more and more, but right now we really just have under 10 industrial composting facilities in probably our state right now. And anaerobic digestion, I know we have one that takes organics, like food organics, and one doesn't take food organics. They just use the manure from their farm. And then sustainable waste management policy. So everyone doing a great job with educating yourself on this kind of stuff, educating your community on local recycling guidelines. We always ask, check before you toss things into the recycling bin. Just check the rules. Is it too big? Is it too small, right? Or small is that medicine size container. Big would be like a 5-gallon bucket is too big. Those big water containers, like for bubblers, those would be too big as well. Kitty litter, big kitty litter buckets, too big for a recycling stream. These are things that would have to go into a bulky container. These can go to transfer stations. They can also, Riverside accepts them. But yeah, so size-wise, is it too big or too small? Is it a container? Are you breaking down those cardboard boxes? Does it have a number 1 through 7 on it? And is it hard and rigid, right? We don't want films or soft materials. Even like tubes, toothpaste tubes, lotion tubes, shampoo containers, a lot of those ones are non-recyclable because they're bendy and not rigid plastics. So that's a tricky one. And then lastly, is it clean or empty? These are all things that lead to that wish cycling, people throwing things in that might not necessarily be recyclable that are pulled out as contamination later down the line. I do have the do and don't cards up front. I might have paper in my bag. I do have the magnets. Those ones are better anyway. You can put them on your fridge. But all to avoid wish cycling. We really need to be reducing our waste so less material ends up in our landfill because by recycling properly, we're able to reduce that waste. We're also able to conserve resources, specifically all those raw materials and the need for raw materials to create new things and new packaging. We can use recycled materials. Not only are we conserving resources there, but we're also conserving space in that wasted landfill space, reducing pollution through this. And also, it's more money back to your communities. So recycling can actually save money as well and save a lot in waste fees. So if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. If you have any questions now, happy to answer them. We also have social media, so you're welcome to follow any of that. We post all sorts of education on our Facebook or Instagram. We also have a recyclopedia on our website that you can look up individual items and it will tell you whether that material is recyclable or not. Yeah, any questions? Now's a good, yeah, awesome.
I shred paper
Okay.
at home. How do I recycle it? If
So
I can't put it in a plastic bag, that would be mixed.
So this is the trickiest thing that we have, actually, I would say, is our shred paper rules right now. So one, we ask that if things don't have to be shredded, they don't get shredded. However, if you do, there are some things, confidential things, that need to be shredded, right? So we do accept that in a clear plastic bag. They have to be in a clear plastic bag, and they can be identified as shredded paper. So if it's clear, we can identify that before it even enters our system as shredded paper, and it can get sorted into the paper. They'll open it up and dump it in there, and then throw the plastic bag in contamination. This is the only time we accept plastic bags or bagged things is if we can identify it as shredded paper and it's immediately dumped into the shredded paper. So keep doing it. If it's going in a clear plastic bag, that's great. That's the best way you can do it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm still not clear on like a candy bag or a potato chip bag.
Mm-hmm.
Those are not recyclable.
Non-recyclable. So any kind of those crinkly snack pack containers are non-recyclable. Candy wrappers, not recyclable, the small ones. I would even say wrappers, if they're paper and they're small, are probably not going to make it through the stream. They're too small, right? So wrappers are generally no.
Okay, so are they the ones that we take back to Shaw's?
No, so the crinkly ones, some of them are going to be more crinkly, metal lined. I don't believe those ones are the ones that they're accepting at Shaw's or Hannaford. They generally will take this, which is low density polyethylene, LDPE number 2. So it's like this, and you can usually stretch it. Bread bags, frozen food bags. So there are drop-offs for this type of material, just not at our facility. This can go back to grocery stores. Target, Shaw's, Hannaford, I believe Walmart had them for a while. I don't know if they still do.
All the potato chips and stuff like that don't go to Shaw's.
don't think they should. I would double check with them, but my understanding is that it's only this type of plastic, which those ones wouldn't be. Those kinds of crinkly
Well, those
plastics.
goes back to the manufacturers that are making these bags. Why can't they be compelled by law?
Well, they will be.
Can't make-
Actually, we have, so extended producer responsibility, which I didn't want to, I could do a whole presentation on it, but EPR for packaging is currently, Maine was actually the first state to pass EPR for packaging laws. We passed it a while ago. I believe it was 2021 when it first passed, and we just created our rules and passed those rules back in December of 2023 or 2024, and it's currently kind of in its first stages where we're basically, they're figuring out how it's really going to work, and in the next coming year is when this is kind of the time when towns opt into the program, but it will be municipal reimbursements for those recycling fees associated with these producers. So producers basically will pay into a fund, and then that fund will cover the costs of recycling those recyclable
Well, what's going to
materials.
change them? Finding them?
So it incentivizes recyclable material and they have to basically pay into the program by tonnage, so how much packaging their company is creating and bringing into the state. So if they're paying by tonnage and they get reimbursed for recyclable material, the idea is that they're going to be making more recyclable materials unless they're getting dinged for non-recyclable material. So that's kind of the basic way to put it. Is that there is current legislation that is being put into place to disincentivize this type of packaging that's hard to manage. I believe we're one of maybe 8 states that currently has it, and this has already been happening in Europe, and it's slowly happening in the United States. So producers are looking out for it and beginning to make these changes in their packaging, and they're coming to us to try to prove that things are recyclable, and we're telling them they're not. So it's happening for sure.
So what are you doing with the discarded, all the mess that comes in that's not?
That goes to our waste to energy. If we have contamination that comes in, that goes to waste to energy facility. So any contaminated material would go there.
That gets burned?
Yep. So that goes to an
So
incineration
all that
process.
plastic that comes through you gets burned? The plastic?
Only the contamination.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, they're all of value, and all of the recyclable materials would carry their own value. We want to send those out to market. So contamination, however, if it falls through cracks, it's too small. If it's film plastic, if it's tanglers, stuff like that, that all gets billed as contamination and incinerated. Yeah.
So you must have a lot of that.
About 10% of what comes through our facility. So it's a lot. More than we'd like to see. So, yeah.
I just wanted to plug Garbage to Garden
Yes.
as a residential composting. It's really, I forget how much it is per month, because I pay per year, but they take bones, they take all your, compostable stuff, dryer lint, animal hair. If you have a greasy pizza box or something, you can put that underneath your bucket and they take that. The paper towels and the napkins can go in there, not facial tissue, but paper towels and napkins that are white.
They take a lot of the stuff that we can't.
They
because
take a
of
lot of
food.
stuff, and you can get compost back, organic compost back. You can order it up beginning April 1st if you're on there. I think they're distributing their bags. You get a nice bag of organic compost dropped off at your home, and you get a clean bucket dropped off at your home. They take your dirty one, leave the clean one.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's a great
It's
program.
really good, and they're in the schools too, I believe.
They're definitely. I actually do some work with them, and they also are one of our only industrial composting sites that gets hot enough to break down those PLA plastics. I don't think they accept it in their curbside program, but they accept it with restaurants they service and grocery stores and stuff like that. They will accept those compostable plastics and other greenware.
They
Schools
can take
and those
used
can break
oil.
down.
If you use a lot of oil, we had neighbors in Portland who made bacon a lot. And they had jars of oil, and they'd give it to a biofuel place or something.
Yeah,
It gets
yeah, made
converted into
biofuels.
biofuel.
Yeah,
So it's really good.
it's an
a
awesome
really good
program. And everyone, I guess North Yarmouth has a drop-off. I know I used to, when I lived in Yarmouth, I was using it, but they have a just kiosk drop-off. So even if you don't do subscription services, there's a community drop-off. There's one down kind of, not at West Custigo, but what's the hall? It's like, is it the town hall? I don't know what it is. Town hall, yeah. Town hall, right down in North Yarmouth. They have a drop-off site, and I believe it's with Garbage to Garden. So the same rules apply, but you can just bring it there, and you don't need to pay for that subscription. You can just drop it off. We have compost buckets, too, if you're interested, that we do give out. So if you didn't want to do the whole program with Garbage to Garden, you just wanted to have your own bin in your kitchen and bring it once a week or whatever to that drop-off site, we do have those, and you can email me. So we give those out to community members. And recycling bins if you're in need, but not the big ones that you need for the town, just little, they're like about 2 feet tall. Little, use mine in my kitchen. So, any other questions?
Grocery receipts, are they too small? I always wonder when I talk, depends on how much you buy, maybe?
I put mine in. I actually do put receipts in, unless it's like a teeny tiny receipt. If it's like, sometimes you buy one thing, it's like this big. Right. But when they're pretty big, I throw it in. I think I would say yes. Yeah.
Why did we go to single sort? Was it too hard on the individual household or the hauling, or because it seems so intensive at the facility?
Yeah. So the benefits outweighed the cost in this situation, where we were able to receive so much more tonnage, simplifying it and creating more access to recycling, that even the cost we were paying for kind of absorbing for all that contamination and the sorting and all of that stuff, it still made it worth it based off of all of the material we were able to accept. So on a larger scale, it's more accessible is really the big reason why there was a shift. And there's even more technology now. As I said, this was built in 2006. We're getting a new facility, so there's a lot more with AI and robots and all that stuff. There's actually places that have robots like sorting instead of people. So there is a lot of technology in the industry that creates a more efficient recycling system. So hopefully check back in 2 years and we'll have an updated recycling tour of our new facility, a lot more futuristic. But yeah, so I think that's the big shift. There are a lot of communities that actually still do source separated, and then they'll bail it themselves and they do their own brokering and marketing to get those out to market. So it's kind of place by place. As I said, we only work with 74 communities, which is a lot, but there's a lot more in Maine that are doing other things for recycling as well. Any other questions? I think it's getting probably pretty late here. I think we're at about an hour. So, all right. I'll be up here. I do have do and don't cards, recycled newspaper, pencils. Yeah, my name's Bea. If you ever have any questions, reach out. Yeah.
In May something, you're coming to do composting 101.
Yeah, so we'll talk about Garbage to Garden. We're going to talk about anaerobic digestion, and we're going to talk about how to have a successful compost in your backyard as well. So if you're interested in starting yourself.
So that date is on that piece of paper that's in the back. So yeah, just letting you know.
Right around garden season. So
right.
Exciting. All right.
Thank
and if
you.
you have any kiddos, we're also going to be doing one in June. That's recycled bead making, I think is where we landed. An upcycling activity as well. So for kids, grandkids, yeah. So keep an eye out for that. All right. Thank you all. Thank you. Yeah. Have a nice one.